All right, so we're about to dig into this incredibly powerful strategy for communication. And believe me, it comes from the last place you'd ever expect. We're talking about a letter written almost 2,000 years ago from inside a prison cell. And our whole journey into this idea starts right here, with this one, kind of mysterious piece of modern art.
Okay, so let's jump right in and take a look at this drawing. It's by an artist named Jack Wu, and wow, there's a lot going on, right? At first glance, it's just this dense mix of symbols and words. But trust me, this single image, it's going to be our roadmap for unpacking this whole thing.
So what are we even looking at? You can see these hands, right? They're clasped in prayer. And there's a doorway that's just glowing with light. But then the whole thing is surrounded by this really intricate, almost cage-like design. What's the story here? What are these symbols trying to tell us?
Well, here's the cool part. This piece of art, it's not just some random, abstract idea. It's actually a direct visual take on a letter that was written, get this, nearly 2,000 years ago. It's like a bridge connecting us right now directly to some really ancient wisdom.
And that source, that ancient letter, it comes from the Apostle Paul, who was a huge figure in the early Christian church. Now, when he wrote this, he wasn't kicking back in a comfy office. No way! He was a prisoner. He was writing this from a jail cell.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This is his big request. He says, straight up, I'm in chains. And then he asks people to pray for a door to be opened. But it's not the door you think. He's not asking to be set free. He wants a door open for his message. Now that's a wild twist, right? And it's the absolute heart of this whole strategy.
So the strategy really kicks off with a certain mindset. The original word for it is perseverance. But what does that really mean? It's this idea of going all out, of just holding on, being totally committed, and just refusing to give up. So this isn't about passively waiting around. It's a really active, super focused way of thinking.
Okay, let's just stop for a second here. Seriously, put yourself in his shoes. You're locked up. What's the number one thing you'd ask people to pray for? Your freedom, right? Or maybe better food? Justice? I mean, when you think about it like that, it really drives home just how weird his request was.
And this strange request is what leads us to the most surprising part of the whole strategy, this deliberate choice he makes between two very, very different doors.
So here it is, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you have the prayer that anyone would expect, right? A door of freedom. Get me out of here. But Paul's actual prayer? It was for a door for the gospel. Get the message out. That is a massive shift in priorities. He's literally saying the message is more important than his own freedom.
So why? Why focus so much on a message door? Well, the whole strategy is really built on three core ideas. First, the belief that prayer isn't just an afterthought. It's the foundational work. It's step one. Second, the idea that some roadblocks aren't physical things you can see. They're what the text calls spiritual. And third, it's this kind of humble realization that, some doors, you just can't muscle them open on your own.
All right, so let's say the door of opportunity swings open. Now what? How do you actually walk through it? Well, see, Paul doesn't just stop at prayer. He gives us this really practical two-part communication playbook for what to do next.
And at first glance, the plan seems, well, pretty simple. Step 1, seize the moment. Step 2, speak with grace and wisdom. Easy, right? But the real genius is what's packed inside each of those steps.
So let's take that first one, seize the moment. The original language is actually redeem the time, which is such a cool phrase. It has this idea of buying back opportunities. So it's not about sitting around waiting for the perfect moment to fall into your lap. Nope. It's about proactively and wisely making the most of every single moment, whether it seems good or bad.
And that brings us to the second principle, which is captured in this absolutely brilliant metaphor for communication. The quote goes, "Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." Okay, grace and salt? Let's break down what that actually means.
First, let's talk about grace. What does it mean to have graceful speech? It really means that your communication comes from a place of goodwill, of kindness, of mercy. It's not just about the words you pick, it's about the whole attitude and spirit behind them.
And what about being seasoned with salt? Well, that is all about getting the measure just right. Think about cooking. If you put too much salt in a dish, it's ruined. But if you put too little, it's totally bland. So seasoning your words with salt means you're tailoring what you say perfectly to the person and the situation. Your words are constructive, they're appropriate, and they're never, ever overwhelming.
Okay, so here's where we bring it all home. How does all this ancient advice, from a guy in a prison cell, actually apply to our lives today? Well, it turns out it's shockingly relevant, especially when you think about our professional lives.
See, the original letter talks about using this strategy with outsiders. And if you translate that to our world, who are the outsiders? Well, it's basically anyone who isn't in your immediate circle of friends and family. We're talking about your colleagues, your clients, your boss, even that person you just met at a conference. These principles were practically designed for those moments.
So, let's just boil this all down into a modern 4-part playbook. First, communicate with goodwill. That just means you start from a place of kindness. Assume positive intent, even if you're in a tough negotiation. Second, use appropriate measure. That's our seasoned with salt idea. So when you're giving feedback, instead of saying, this is all wrong, you could say something like, hey, the foundation here is really solid. What if we tweaked X and Y to make it even stronger? See, it's constructive, not crushing. And that requires the third part, wisdom. You got to be able to read the room, understand the person you're talking to. And when you put all that together, you get to the final piece. You can adapt to your audience. You know how to give the right answer to the right person at exactly the right time.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started, with the door. It's the central metaphor for this whole strategy, isn't it? And for you, that door could be anything. A new job opportunity, a promotion. Maybe it's finally having that tough conversation you've been putting off. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. In your life, right now, what door are you asking to be opened?